Hey guys, Mark here. I hope you are well. Today I'm going to show you how to do the heart rate or EKG stitch. This stitching style is a design by Ted Potter. During practice for this video, my wife came around and as a doctor, she modified the stitching style to more closely resemble a healthy heart rate. Here is a quick look at the pattern that we're going to be stitching. Let's take a look at the supplies. For the supplies, the first thing that you're going to need is a Cobra knot bracelet. For stitching, a lacing needle is recommended. For stitching the heart, you're going to need 9 inches of microcord in red color. For the heart rate, I recommend using between 2.5 to 3 feet of microcord. The final two supplies are scissors and a lighter used to cut and melt our cords. Let's begin stitching. We are first going to stitch in the heart. Find the middle point of your bracelet. So this is the middle point in my case. So we're going to stitch around these 3 square knots. First, come to the bottom of the bracelet and secure your piece of cord in place under one of the cords. Like this. Then come up through the middle square knot on the bottom, like this. Pull firmly onto your cord. Move here to the right side of this square knot, down, up in between your 2 square knots, down on the left side of this square knot, up on the bottom here, through the bottom square knot, then back here to the left side of this square knot, top down, up in between the 2 square knots, and finally down on the right side of this square knot. And this completes our heart. So something like this. Now secure your end by again running it around a cord on the bottom. Cut your cord and your heart is stitched in. I'm now going to stitch in the heart rate. We're going to have peaks every second square knot. So here, here, here and here. We're going to start on the underside, again attaching our cord around one of the strands. Like this. Pass under a few more strands and come up at the top like this. So the first peak is going to be here. I'm going to travel up to here in between the two cord strands. Then bottom up at the top of the peak. Then here to the bottom in between two square knots. Come up above here in between the two cord strands. Then down into the seam opening, so in between the two square knots, like this, and up at the top of the peak, and down in between the two cord strands here. So this is one peak. Then come up here in between the two cord strands, travel to the next peak, which is here, and down in between the two cord strands. Then up in between are two square knots, and down here at the bottom in between two square knots. Then up here in between are two cord strands, and down in between are two square knots. Up at the peak and down in between the two cord strands. Like this. Then come up here in between the two cord strands, come up to the heart, so somewhere around here, go under the heart, like this, and continue traveling to the next peak. So, two square knots away, come down, up in between your two square knots, down in between two square knots, up in between the two cord strands here, and down in between the two square knots. up at the top of the peak and down here in between the two core strands. Up here in between the two core strands, so here, over the top to the next peak, down, up at the top of the peak, in between these two square knots, up in between the two core strands, and back down in between your two square knots, up at the top of the peak, down in between your two core strands, here, like this, finally up here in between two core strands. Come to the end of your bracelet and down to the bottom. On the bottom, tuck under a few strands and secure your strand by wrapping it around one of your strands. Like this. Finally, what I'm going to do is retighten this heart rate pattern. To tighten up my stitching, I'm going to start at the start of my stitching, go through it, and simply tighten up the same way that I stitched it. So I pull on this cord, then on this one here, and the one on the top. We pull in the slack, pull it into our end, trim the end, and we are done. So the heart rate stitch designed by Ted Potter, modified by my wife, and I was also there. So guys, I hope that you enjoyed this little project. Thank you very much for joining me today. Have a nice and healthy heart rate, and see ya next time.